From the phone line to the corner office. Picture a 22-year-old answering phones in a call center in Tempe, Arizona. Headset on, script in front of her, fielding a customer who's furious about a billing error. That's Monday. 9 years later, the same person is running the entire customer operations division of a publicly traded company, signing off on a budget bigger than some small cities. No college degree, no family connections, no inheritance, just a phone, a headset, and a decision she made in her first 90 days that almost nobody else on her team made. Here's what's strange about that story: it's not as rare as you would think, and it's not as common as you might want to believe either. So let's get something straight right at the top, because I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. Most people who work a phone job do not become a CEO, full stop. If anyone tells you otherwise, they are selling you something. But here's the part that is true, and it's honestly more useful than the myth. The voice process industry, call centers, BPOs, customer support, technical support, sales development, is one of the fastest internal promotion engines in the entire American economy. People walk in with a high school diploma and within 5 to 10 years walk out as directors, VPs, and yes, in a meaningful number of documented case as CEOs and founders. Not 2 or 3 years, more like a decade of deliberate compounding moves. But compared to almost any other entry level job in the country, that's still remarkably fast. So today we are not chasing a myth, we are doing something better. We are going to reverse engineer the actual mechanics of how this happens, the specific decisions, skills, and moves that separate the agent who's still on the phone in year 6 from the agent who's running the flow, then the site, then the company. If you work in this industry, you are thinking about starting in it, the next 3 hours might be the most useful career conversation you ever sit through. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. The voice process industry has one of the highest turnover rates of any sector in the US economy. Some centers cycle through 30 to 45% of their workforce every single year. Most people who take a call center job take it as a placeholder, a for now job while they figure out something else. And because they treat it as temporary, they never build the one thing that actually gets you promoted in this industry: a visible, measurable track record inside the building you're already standing in. That's the first mistake. The second is thinking the path up is about seniority, just showing up long enough. It isn't. Contact centers are one of the few corporate environments where performance is tracked to the minute. Average handle time, first call resolution, customer satisfaction, quality audits. That means the people who get noticed aren't the ones who have been there longest. They are the ones whose numbers tell a story of getting better, faster, more consistently than anyone around them. Over the next 3 hours, we are going to walk through exactly how the internal ladder works, from agent all the way up to director, VP, and for a rare but real few, founder or CEO. We will cover the habits that get agents noticed in their first 90 days, how to turn your own metrics into a promotion case instead of something to dread, the skills that carry you from a headset to executive chair, a real documented executive story, and the myths and habits that quietly keep talented people stuck for years. By the end, you won't walk away thinking you will be a CEO by next Christmas. You will walk away with something more valuable, a clear, honest man of exactly that's what separates the people who get stuck from the people who get promoted again, and eventually run the place. Let's get into it. The agent stage. Here's something almost nobody tells new hires: the agent stage isn't a waiting room, it's the audition. Most people treat their first year on phones as something to survive, get through the shift, hit the minimum, go home. But the agents who eventually run the building treat that first year as the only chance they'll ever get to build a track record from completely blank state. Think about it this way: Every promotion decision a company makes is really a bet on risk. When a director promotes someone into a leadership role, they are staking their own reputation on the person not failing, not falling apart under pressure. So the question isn't who's friendly or who's been here the longest. It's whose numbers over time tell me this person gets better under pressure instead of worse. And that data starts accumulating on day one. Let me tell you about Marcus. He started as a technical support agent for an internet provider in Ohio straight out of high school. For the first 3 months, he was average, nothing special. Then something shifted. He started staying 5 minutes after difficult calls to write better notes for the next agent who might get that customer again. Things almost invisible, but his team lead noticed the pattern in the notes before she ever noticed Marcus. By month 6, Marcus had the second highest first call resolution rate on a team of 31 people. Not because he was smarter than everyone else, because he would quietly build a personal reference document of the 20 most common issues and the fastest verified fixes for each one, and he updated it every week based on what actually worked. 18 months in, he was pulled to train new hires. That's rung one. Think of the agent stage like the minor leagues in baseball. Nobody's watching the box scores from the stands, but scouts are watching every single game because the players who perform consistently well when no one important is in the audience are the ones who don't collapse when the stadium is full. So what do you actually do with that? Starting this week, track your own metrics. Don't wait for management to handle you the numbers. Build yourself a personal playbook of solutions to the problems that come up over and over. Volunteer for the unglamorous stuff nobody wants, like documentation or buddy shifting, new hires. Those are visibility magnets. And ask your team lead directly what the top performers on the team do differently. Almost nobody ever asks that question out loud. The single biggest mistake at this stage is optimizing for speed alone. New agents often assume the fastest handle time wins. It does. Quality teams catch that pattern immediately, and a reputation for rushing customers off the phone, one of the hardest things to undo later. The agents who get promoted are fast because they are accurate, not accurate because they are slow. So here's where we have landed. The agent stage, the only period in your entire career where you can build track record with zero prior reputation to overcome. Use it now. Once you have built that track record, what actually happens next? How do you go from best agent on the floor to leading the flow? That's rung 2, and it trips up more people than any other step in the hole in this ladder. Team lead. Here's the part almost nobody prepares you for. Being a great agent and being a great team lead requires almost opposite instincts. A great agent is judged on their own numbers. The team lead is judged on everyone else's. That's a bigger jump than the job title suggests, and it's exactly where a lot of promising careers stall out. The agents who struggle here almost make one specific error. They keep trying to be the best individual performer in the room, jumping in to solve problems themselves instead of coaching someone else through it. It feels productive in the moment. It's actually the opposite of the job. A team lead's real output isn't their own calls. It's the average performance of everyone on their team 6 months from now. Priya was promoted to team lead as at a healthcare answering service in Texas. After 18 months as a top performing agent, her first instinct, like almost everyone, was to keep taking the escalated calls herself because she was faster at resolving them than anyone else on her 12-person team. Her flow manager pulled her aside in week 3 and said something that reframed the entire job for her. Every call you take yourself is a call your team doesn't learn from. So Priya changed her approach. Instead of taking escalations, she started sitting beside agents during their toughest calls, letting them work the problem while she coached in real time. Her own resolution speed on paper looked worst for a month. But her team's average handle time dropped 11% over the following quarter, and two of her agents were promoted to senior roles, which reflects directly on the lead who developed them. That's the metric that actually gets you to the next rung, not what you can do, but what your people can now do because of you. A team lead is like a pit crew chief, not the fastest driver on the team. Nobody remembers how fast the chief personally can change a tire. They remember how many races the team won because the pit stops got faster under that person's direction. If you are stepping into this role, here's what to actually do. Resist taking over difficult calls yourself. Coach in real time instead, because your job is multiplication, not addition. Learn to read a scorecard for your whole team, not just your own history. Keep a one-on-one rhythm with every agent, even briefly, because leads who only show up during problems get read as punitive, and document who you have developed and how. That becomes your case for the next promotion. Beyond oversolving, the second major mistake is avoiding hard conversations. New leads often let performance issues slide because they were recently a peer and don't want to seem harsh. But operations managers are watching specifically for whether a lead can hold a team accountable without becoming a friendly group casualty. Team lead is the first job in this entire ladder that isn't about you. It's about whether the people around you get better because you are there. Get that right, and you have proven the exact skill every level above this one is built on, multiplying other people's output. Which brings us to the next rung, the one where the job stops being about a single team and starts being about an entire flow. Operations manager. If team lead is about developing a dozen people, operations manager is about running a system that develops dozens of leads and hundreds of agents at once without touching most of them directly. This is where the job shifts from coaching individuals to designing the conditions that make good coaching happen automatically across an entire flow. This is also where most people's instincts fail them a second time. The habits that made someone a great team lead, close, hands-on coaching, don't scale to 200 agents. An operations manager who tries to personally mentor everyone burns out in 4 months. The ones who succeed here learn to manage through their team leads instead of around them. Devon runs operations for a 260 agent sales support flow for a subscription box company. When he was promoted from team lead, his first 3 weeks looked like his old job at 10 times the scale. He tried to personally review call recordings for every underperforming agent across all 11 teams. It was unsustainable, and quality scores actually dipped because his own leads felt sidelined. That turned things around. What turned things around was a shift in where he spent his time. Instead of coaching agents directly, Devon built a weekly 30-minute session with just his 11 team leads where they reviewed flow-wide trends together, and each lead left with one specific coaching focus for their team that week. Within 2 quarters, flow-wide quality scores were up across nearly every team. Not because Devon got more efficient at coaching individuals, but because he would stop being the bottleneck and started being the multiplier of multipliers. And operations manager is like an air traffic controller, not a pilot. The job isn't flying any single plane well. It's designing a system where dozens of pilots, none of whom you are personally flying with, land safely at the same time. So shift your own time from individual coaching to developing your leads coaching ability, because you are now 2 levels removed from the agent. Build a simple weekly rhythm for surfacing flow-wide trends before they become flow-wide problems. Protect your lead's authority. Publicly undermining a lead in front of their team erodes the whole structure beneath you, and start learning the language of the business above you. Cost per contact, shrinkage, forecasting, that's the vocabulary the next rung is measured in. The most common failure at this level is confusing busyness with impact. Operations managers who are personally putting out fires all day often look the most dedicated and get promoted the least because their flow never becomes self-sufficient. The ones who get pulled up to the director are the ones whose flow runs well even when they take a week off. So notice the pattern across these first three rungs. Agent, build a track record. Team lead, multiply a team. Operations manager, multiply the multipliers. That pattern doesn't stop here. Next, we are climbing into director and VP territory where the job becomes less about people directly and starts becoming about strategy, budget, and the kind of decisions that show up on a company's earnings call. Director, up through operations manager, everything you have been doing is still visible. You can walk the flow, watch a call, sit in on a coaching session. Director is where everything changes. A director is usually responsible for multiple sites or multiple operations managers, sometimes across different cities or time zones. You can no longer personally verify most of what happens. Your job becomes building systems and reporting structures that tell you the truth about performance when you are not in the room. This is also where the vocabulary of the job shifts hard toward business language. Operations manager talk about handle time and quality scores. Directors talk about cost per contact, shrinkage, forecasting accuracy, and attrition cost. Because at this level, leadership above you isn't asking whether the agents are happy, they are asking whether the operation is financially sound and whether it can scale. Renata was promoted to director over 4 sites for a telecom customer service provider after 5 years, climbing through agent, lead, and operations manager roles. Her first real test wasn't a people problem, it was a forecasting problem. Staffing was consistently off by 10 to 15% every month, which meant either unbudgeted overtime or customers left on hold long enough to hurt satisfaction company wide. Instead of treating it as an HR issue, Renata treated it as a data problem. She pulled 18 months of call volume patterns and found the forecasting model didn't account for a seasonal spike tied to the company's own billing cycle, something nobody upstream had connected to staffing. She rebuilt the model and presented it not as we need more headcount, but as a dollar quantified fix, a projected reduction in overtime spend that more than covered the cost of 2 new hires. That's the director level move, translating an operational problem into a financial argument the executives above her could act on immediately. A director is like a city planner, not a building inspector. You are not checking whether one building is up to code. You are deciding where the roads go, how traffic flows between neighborhoods, and what happens when the population doubles. Learn the financial vocabulary of your business fluently enough to use it unprompted. Build reporting systems that surface problems before they reach you personally. Translate operational requests into financial terms when you present upward. We need more staff rarely wins. This costs less than the overtime it prevents usually does. Protect the operations manager reporting to you from constant escalation hopping. If every problem skips straight to you, you haven't actually built a structure. The most common failure at director level is staying at an operations manager with a bigger title, still personally jumping into daily flow issues instead of building the systems that make those interventions unnecessary. Get comfortable speaking in numbers that matter to the people above you, because the next rung, vice president, is conducted almost entirely in that language. Vice president. A vice president overseeing customer operations typically isn't running the flow at all anymore, even indirectly. The job is closer to a business owner's than a manager's, setting strategy for the entire function, defending its budget, and being personally accountable for outcomes that show up in the company's overall performance, retention, cost efficiency, revenue impact, whatever matters most to the business. This is usually the first level where someone from a voice process background is competing directly against people with traditional MBAs for the same seat. What separates the operators who make it here from the ones who stall as director is usually one specific thing: the ability to connect the operation they know intimately to the broader business strategy the rest of the executive team is focused on. James spent 14 years in the industry, agent to team lead to operations manager to director, before being named VP of customer experience at a mid-sized insurance company. Leadership had been treating the contact center purely as a cost center, constantly pressuring it to cut expenses. In his first broad presentation, James connected call center performance directly to customer retention data, showing that customers who had one excellent support interaction in their first 90 days renewed at a rate 18% points higher than 18 percentage points higher than customers who didn't. That single reframe from a cost to minimize to a retention lever to invest in changed how the entire executive team viewed his division. He wasn't just running a department anymore. He was managing a function the company understood contributed directly to revenue. 2 years later, when the company needed a new chief customer officer, James was the internal candidate with the clearest track record of connecting his operation to the company's actual financial outcomes. A VP is like a general manager of a sports franchise, not a head coach. The director worries about this season's roster and this week's game plan. The general manager worries about whether the whole franchise is financially sustainable and whether ownership believes it's being run well enough to keep investing in it. Learn to connect your functions performance to company wide outcomes. Leadership actually tracks revenue, retention, reputation, not just internal operational metrics. Build relationships outside your own function, because VPs are chosen partly on how well other departments trust them. Practice presenting to executives and boards, distilling a complex operation into a 5-minute numbers backed argument is learned, not innate. And look for one high visibility project that lets you demonstrate strategic thinking beyond your day to day role. The most common failure here is staying purely operational minded, still talking about handle time and quality scores in rooms where everyone else is talking about market share and shareholder value. Nobody above you is going to translate your operational wins into business language for you. You have to do that translation yourself every time. Director is systems and financial fluency. VP is connecting your operation to the company's actual strategy. And at every rung so far, agent, lead, operations manager, director, VP, the skill that goes got someone promoted was the same skill in a bigger container, making other people and eventually entire systems better than they would be without you. That's exactly what we are going to unpack next. The handful of people who actually made the jump from this industry's entry level flow all the way to the CEO's chair. A real executive story. Everything so far has been about the mechanics of climbing. Now let's look at someone who actually completed that climb using his own account to how it happened, so you can see the pattern in a real career instead of a hypothetical one. Nick Jeever graduated high school in June of 1986 and took a summer job at a call center in Manhattan, mostly because a friend referred him and he needed money before starting college that fall. By his own account, he didn't love the work at first, but he stayed with it, and that same year he was tapped for a promotion from agent to supervisor. He was 18, a college freshman, suddenly coaching people twice his age. From there, the promotions kept coming. Larger teams, new hire training, broader operational roles. He spent the next 2 decades inside the BPO and call center industry working through leadership positions before founding his own company, Customer Serve, in 2006. Today he's its CEO. That's a 20-year arc from an 18-year-old supervisor to company founder. Not 2 or 3 years, but a career built on the exact compounding pattern we have been walking through this entire episode. What's notable about his account isn't that it's rare. It's how much of it lines up with everything we have already covered. He got his first promotion within months, not because he asked for it, but because he had shown up reliably with everyone around him who was watching the clock. He describes mentors who took a chance on an 18-year-old, which lines up with something worth saying explicitly. Nobody climbs this ladder entirely alone. He's also direct about something important. He calls his path an accidental career, not a plan he mapped out at 18. Most executives who came up through this industry didn't set out with a 10-year plan to become a CEO. They took the next opportunity in front of them, performed well enough that another opportunity appeared, and kept doing that for a very long time. That's a more honest and more useful model than a fast track formula, because it's a pattern you can actually follow starting Monday morning. Careers like this don't look like a rocket launch, they look like a compound interest. No single year looks dramatic, but stack enough small consistent deposits, a promotion here, a stretch assignment there, reputation for reliability that compounds over years, and after a while the total looks almost unbelievable from the outside, even though every individual step was ordinary. The threads that connect these stories. Jiva's path is one documented example, but it's not an isolated pattern across the customer experience and BPO industry. It's common enough that veterans regularly write and speak about it as a recognized career track. So let's pull out what actually repeats, because the specifics differ but the underlying moves don't. Thread 1. The first promotion came fast, and it came from reliability, not charisma. It in nearly every account the first promotion happens within the first year, sometimes within months. It's almost always framed as he showed up, did solid work, and someone noticed. Thread 2. They stayed in the industry instead of leaving it. This might be the most underrated pattern of all. Almost nobody in these stories treated the call center job as a stepping stone out of the industry. They treated it as the start of a career inside it. Thread 3. A mentor or manager took a chance on them. Nobody climbs this ladder in total isolation. That's not luck you can manufacture, but it's a relationship you can actually actively build by being someone worth advocating for and by asking directly for feedback and stretch opportunities. Thread 4, worth repeating one more time because it's the honest core of this whole podcast. The timeline was always measured in years, not weeks. Jiva's path from agent to founder took 20 years. That's not a discouraging fact. It's the useful one, because it means the ladder is climbable through ordinary sustained effort. So here's what to actually do with this. Treat your current role as the start of an industry career, not a placeholder. Actively seek a mentor instead of waiting to be discovered. Measure your progress in years, not months. And when a stretch opportunity appears, take it even if it feels premature. The biggest mistake people make after hearing a story like this is trying to copy the specific steps instead of the underlying pattern. Jiva's path ran through 1980s New York telemarketing. Yours will run through a completely different company, technology, and decade. The transferable lesson is the posture, reliability, staying in the industry, seeking mentorship, playing a long game, not the specific job titles or timeline. Real climbs like this exist, they are documented, and they share a consistent shape. Next, we are going to get tactical, the exact skills you can start building this week in your current role that shows up at every single rung of this ladder. 5 skills that transfer. Here's a question worth sitting with. What does answering an angry customer's phone call at 9 in the morning actually have in common with presenting a budget to a board of directors? On the surface, nothing. But if you look closely at the people who climbed this entire ladder, the same 5 underlying skills show up at the bottom and the top. They are just applied to bigger problems as you go. Skill 1 is de-escalation. Every agent learns to take a furious customer from a 10 to a 2 in a few minutes. That's not a phone skill, it's conflict skill. At the director and VP level, you are de-escalating a different kind of fire. A client threatening to walk, two departments blaming each other, a board member questioning your budget. The mechanics are identical. Skill 2 is reading what isn't said. Good agents learn to hear the real issue underneath a complaint. That same instinct becomes essential at the top. Knowing when a quiet team is disengaged rather than fine, or when a client's polite email is actually a warning sign. Skill 3 is working inside a system you didn't design. Agents operate inside scripts and policies built by someone else, and the good ones get results anyway. Executives do the exact thing, just with bigger constraints. Budgets they didn't set, market conditions they don't control. Skill 4 is explaining complicated things simply. A good agent can explain a confusing billing policy in one clear sentence. That's the exact same skill a VP needs to explain a complex trade-off to a board in one clear slide. And skill 5 is staying steady when things are on fire. Anyone who's worked a queue during a system outage knows what it's like to keep functioning while everything falls apart. That composure is precisely what separates leaders who make good decisions during a crisis from the ones who panic and make it worse. Think of these 5 skills like 5 muscles you are training every single day on the phones, whether you realize it or not. The people who climb are usually the ones who notice they are building this muscle and start training it on purpose. After a tough call, write one sentence about what the customer actually needed underneath their complaint. Practice explaining one policy to a new hire in a single simple sentence. Notice your own reaction during a stressful shift, and name it as training rather than just surviving it. And ask your team lead which of these 5 skills they think you are strongest and weakest in. Most agents have never been asked that question. The biggest mistake is treating these skills as things you will develop later. Once you are officially in a leadership role, that's backward. Every one of these skills is being built right now in your current seat, whether or not anyone's calling it leadership development. 5 skills, one phone job, and they scale all the way to the top of an org chart. Now let's talk about something a lot of agents actively avoid: metrics. Most people see their scorecard as something to survive. The people who climb see it as the single most useful tool they have for building their case to move up. Metrics as a promotion case. Most agents check their metrics the way people check a report card. They are afraid of quickly, anxiously hoping for a passing grade. That's a completely understandable reaction. It's also a wasted opportunity because in this industry, metrics are one of the only truly objective pieces of evidence you have for why you deserve the next role. Here's the shift in thinking that changes everything. Your scorecard isn't just a measurement of how you're doing. It's a running, dated, verifiable record of your own improvement, and improvement tracked over time is exactly what a manager needs to justify promoting you to someone above them. Tasha worked phone support for a regional insurance provider. After about 8 months, she noticed her quality scores had climbed steadily, but nobody above her seemed to have registered it. Instead of waiting to be noticed, she built a one-page summary of her own metrics trend over 2 quarters, plus a short list of process improvements she had suggested that had actually been adopted by her team. She brought that one page to her next one-on-one, not as a complaint but as a straightforward question: based on this trend, what would it take for you to consider me for a lead role? Her manager didn't have an immediate answer, but 2 weeks later she was named backup lead for an upcoming leave coverage, which became her actual promotion path 4 months later. After that, the metrics didn't get her promoted by themselves, but they turned a vague hope into a specific evidence-backed conversation her manager could act on. Treating your scorecard as a promotion case is like a lawyer building a file instead of hoping the judge remembers the good things you did last year. Nobody above you is tracking your progress as closely as you can track it yourself. Keep a personal log of your own metrics trend over time, just not just the snapshot management shows you. Now note specific moments tied to those numbers, a process fix you suggested, a difficult call you turned around. Bring that record to one-on-ones proactively framed as a question about growth, and ask your manager directly what improvement sustained over that period would make you a credible candidate for the next role. The most common mistake is either ignoring metrics entirely or obsessing over a single bad week instead of the overall trend. One rough day next to 11 strong months isn't a weakness, it's a rounding error. Your scorecard isn't a threat, it's a case file, and the agents who learn to read it that way turn an anxious monthly check-in into one of the strongest promotion arguments available in this entire industry. We have now covered the ladder, the real story, and the transferable skills. Next, let's talk about the mistakes and the myths that quietly keep otherwise talented, capable people stuck for years. 5 myths that trap good agents. If everything we have covered so far is the map, this chapter is about the potholes. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: most of the people who stay stuck at agent or team lead for 6, 8, 10 years aren't stuck because they lack talent. They are stuck because they believe one of a handful of myths that quietly steer their decisions in the wrong direction year after year. Myth 1: tenure is the same as progress. It isn't, not on its own. This industry promotes based on demonstrated trajectory, not attendance. Two agents can both have 5 years of tenure. One has 5 years of compounding growth, the other has 1 year repeated 5 times. Leadership can tell the difference immediately even when the agent can't. Myth 2: if I am good enough, someone will notice. This one feels humble, which is exactly why it's so effective at keeping people stuck. Waiting to be discovered sounds like patience. In practice, it's often just avoidance of an uncomfortable conversation. Merit plus visibility moves faster than merit alone every time. Myth 3: leadership roles are for a different kind of person. A lot of agents quietly assume team leads and directors are naturally more confident, more extroverted, more born to lead, but nearly every leadership account we have looked at describes someone who didn't feel ready and stepped up away. Confidence in leadership roles is overwhelming, but built on built by doing the role, not a prerequisite you arrive with. Myth 4: a lateral move is a step backward. Agents often turn down move that doesn't come with an obvious title bump because it feels like standing still. But some of the most useful moves in this industry are sideways into a higher visibility program, a harder client, a broader skill set. And myth 5: the ladder only goes one way. Some agents assume the only path is a straight line up, and if that exact sequence isn't available at their company, they are stuck. In reality, people switch specialities, move into training or quality or workforce management, and climb back into leadership from a different angle. These myths work like fog on a windshield. They don't stop the car, they just make you drive slower and more cautiously than the road actually requires. Ask yourself honestly whether your last year looked different from the year before or just repeated it. Pick up specific manager conversation to have this month instead of continuing to wait. Say yes to one lateral move in the next quarter, even without a title change, and list every path you have seen someone take to leadership at your company, not just the most obvious one. The mistake underneath 5 myths is the same one: treating career growth as something that happens to you rather than something you actively build. Clear these 5 out of your thinking, and the path forward looks a lot less foggy. Now let's talk about the mistakes that show up not in how people think but how they actually behave day to day. Habits that quietly sabotage people. Even agents who have cleared every myth we just covered can still get stuck because of habits. Small repeated behaviors that undercut their own case for promotion without them ever noticing. These are harder to catch than myths because they don't feel like mistakes in the moment, they feel like personality. Habit 1, complaining in the wrong rooms. Venting about a bad process is completely normal. Everyone does it. The problem is when it becomes someone's default mode in front of the people who make promotion decisions. Leadership isn't looking for agents who never have complaints. They are looking for agents who bring problems forward with a proposed fix attached. Habit 2, inconsistency instead of excellence. A brilliant day followed by 3 mediocre ones reads very differently to a manager than 5 solidly good days in a row. Consistency is what gets trust with more responsibility because it's what a manager can rely on when they are not watching. Habit 3, avoiding the skills that feel uncomfortable. Some agents are excellent on calls but quietly avoid documentation over cross training or giving feedback to peers. Avoiding discomfort in a low stakes agent role often means encountering that same discomfort for the first time in a much higher stakes leadership role. And habit 4, burning bridges on the way out or staying too long out of loyalty. Two opposite versions of the same mistake. This industry is smaller than it looks at the leadership level, and the same names resurface across companies over years. These habits are like a slow leak in a tire. No single instance feels like a crisis, but drive on it long enough unaddressed and it quietly shapes the whole journey. Before raising a complaint to leadership, pair it with at least one possible fix. Track your own consistency, not just your best days. Volunteer specifically for the task that makes you least comfortable this month. And when you leave a role, treat the exit with the same care as the interview that got you the job. The deepest version of this mistake is assuming self awareness is automatic. Most people don't notice these habits in themselves because they feel like just how I am rather than choices with consequences. The single fastest way to catch them is to ask a manager or trusted peer directly which of these four they would flag in you. Between the myths in the last chapter and the habits in this one, you now have a pretty complete picture of what keeps people stuck. Let's talk about how the specific soft skills you build in this industry become the real currency of trust that gets someone pulled into rooms they weren't originally invited to. Building trust. Let's talk about something that never shows up on a performance review but quietly decides who gets pulled into which rooms. Trust. Not the vague feel good version of the word, a specific buildable kind of trust that operates almost like currency inside an organization. You earn it in small deposits, you can spend it, and you can absolutely go bankrupt if you are not careful with it. In every promotion decision above the agent level, someone is making a bet on you specifically because they believe things about how you will behave when they are not watching. That belief doesn't come from your metrics, it comes from a pattern of small moments that accumulate into a reputation. Carlos was leading a project to migrate his team onto a new scheduling system with a deadline set by his director. 2 weeks before launch, he realized the timeline wasn't realistic. Instead of quietly hoping it would work out, he went directly to his director with the problem, 3 options for handling it, and his own recommendation. His director later told him that moment mattered more to her than any of his stressful project launches before it, not because missing a deadline is good, it isn't, but because Carlos had shown her something she couldn't verify any other way. That when things went wrong, he would surface it early, come with solutions instead of excuses, and not try to manage the problem alone out of fear of looking bad. 6 months later, when a much bigger project came up, Carlos was the first person she thought of. Trust like this works like a credit score, not a trophy case. Nobody's keeping a highlight reel of your best moments. They are quietly tracking a pattern. Do you deliver what you say you will? And when you can't, do you say so early and clearly? When you commit to a deadline, treat it as close to sacred, and when you genuinely can't hit one, flag it as early as possible. Bring problems forward with at least a rough set of options, not just the problem itself. Do what you said you would do even when nobody's checking, and you credit to your team publicly while taking responsibility of failures privately with your own manager. The common mistake is thinking trust is built through big visible wins. Leadership is actually watching the smaller, more frequent moments. What you do when something goes wrong, whether your word matches your actions. Trust is a currency built in small, unglamorous deposits. It's the invisible qualification behind almost every promotional decision we have discussed. Now let's talk about the other half of this equation. How you actually get pulled into rooms you weren't automatically invited to, because trust alone doesn't guarantee visibility. Getting into the room, trust gets you considered, but someone still has to think of you at the exact moment an opportunity opens up, and that requires being visible in the right ways to the right people before the opportunity exists. Move 1. Volunteer for cross-functional project. Every operation runs occasional projects that pull people from outside their normal team, a tool rollout, a process redesign. These are chronically understaffed with volunteers, which is exactly why they are valuable. They put you in a room with people who would otherwise never see your work directly. Move 2. Ask to shadow one level up. Most agents never ask to sit in on a team lead's coaching session. It feels like an unusual request. It rarely is. Most leaders are glad to have someone show genuine interest, and it puts you directly in front of the person who might one day decide whether you are ready for that role. Move 3. Build relationships outside your direct chain. Promotion decisions, especially about team lead, are rarely made by one person in isolation. Someone who's only known within their own small team is invisible to that broader conversation. Move 4. Say yes to the unpaid extra mile selectively. Taking on extra visibility, building work indefinitely with no path to advancement can turn into being taken advantage of. A stretch project with a clear connection to your growth is worth it. Open ended extra work with no discussion of where it leads deserves a direct conversation first. Getting into the room is like being cast in a play. Being talented doesn't matter if the director has never seen you perform. Identify one cross-functional project at your company and volunteer for it this quarter. Ask one leader one level above you if you can shadow a meeting. Name 3 people outside your direct team you could build a genuine relationship with, and reach out to one this month. And before saying yes to open-ended extra work, ask what it would lead to. The most common mistake is confusing visibility with self-promotion and avoiding both out of discomfort. Agents who avoid all forms of visibility often get passed over, not because anyone doubted them, but because nobody with promotion authority ever had the chance to see what they could do. Trust gets you trusted with more, and visibility gets you considered when the trust is already there. Together, they are how someone goes from being a great performer only their immediate team knows about to being the name that comes up in a room they weren't even Next, we are going to shift gears and talk about the actual mental and identity shift that happens somewhere around director or VP. The identity shift. Here's something almost nobody says out loud, and it catches a lot of newly promoted directors and VPs off guard. Every promotion up through operations manager basically feels like the same job with more scope. Then somewhere around director or VP, that pattern breaks. The job doesn't just get bigger, it becomes a different profession wearing a familiar name. Up Through operations manager, your success is measured in things you can watch happen. At director and above, a lot of your impact won't show up for months. Whether a forecasting model holds up next quarter, whether a strategic bet on technology pays off next year, that's a genuinely different kind of work. And the discomfort people feel here isn't a sign they are for failing, it's a sign the ground actually shifted. Doug, promoted to VP of Customer Operations after 14 years, described his first 6 months as the most disorienting stretch of his entire career. More disorientation, more disorienting than his first day as a 18-year-old agent on the floor. He always knew within an hour whether something was working. As a VP, he would make a call in January and not know it was right until a board review in April. He seriously considered stepping back down. That what changed his mind was a mentor pointing out that he was still judging his own performance by operations manager standards, checking for the same immediate feedback the flow always gave him. Once he consciously redefined what a good week looked like, from visible daily wins to steady progress on slower moving bets, the disorientation stopped feeling like failure. Moving into director or VP is like getting a bigger office and more like a professional is less like getting a bigger office and more like a professional athlete moving into coaching. The skills are related, but the day to day work, the source of feedback, the timeline of results is genuinely different, even though it can look similar from the outside. Expect the gap between action and feedback to widen significantly. Deliberately redefine what a good week looks like in the new role instead of unconsciously grading yourself by your old job standards. Find a mentor who's already made this specific jump and give yourself real time before judging whether the role fits. The disorientation many people feel in the first 6 months is normal, not a signal or retreat. The most common mistake is either fighting the shift by staying too operationally hands on or interpreting the disorientation itself as proof of not belonging. Both come from expecting the new job to feel like the old one, just bigger. It won't, and that's the actual shape of the work at this level. Now, let's talk about the layer above even that. What it actually takes to be trusted with an entire company, not just function within one, responsible for the whole business. We have talked throughout this podcast about the rare cases where someone climbs all the way from agent to CEO or founder, real, documented but genuinely uncommon and always built over a decade or more. This is about what that final layer actually requires, because it's different again from everything below it, including VP. A VP is accountable for a function. A CEO or founder is accountable for the entire business, revenue, product, hiring, culture, all of it at once, with no one function to hide inside anymore. It's less a promotion than a complete change of vantage point, and the people who make that jump successfully tend to share one specific trait at every level, because every level below they were already curious about parts of the business outside their own lane. Remember Nick Jiva's story from earlier mentioned. 20 years are from an 18-year-old call center supervisor to founder. What's easy to miss is what happened in between. By his own description, he stayed close to the industry's business side the entire time, tracking how outsourcing companies were growing and going public long before he had any official reason to care. That curiosity, sustained over 2 decades, is what eventually gave him the judgment and to found and run a company of his own. Running a function is like being an excellent department head at a university. Running the whole company is like becoming the university president, responsible for every department at once, including ones you have no personal expertise in. The people who make that leap, well, are the ones who were curious about the whole university long before anyone made them responsible for it. Read your company's public material, all hands communication closely, even outside your function. Ask leaders in other departments how their part of the business actually works. purely out of curiosity. Pay attention to how decisions get made above your level, not just what gets decided. And treat every function you touch, finance, product, marketing, as worth understanding at a basic level. The most common mistake at this level is staying purely excellent within one lane forever. Assuming deep functional mastery alone earns you the top seat, it rarely does. The jump to CEO or founder is fundamentally about breadth of understanding across an entire business, not depth in one function. The final jump isn't really about being the best at your function. It's about years of genuine curiosity about the whole business, not just your corner of it. That's the honest answer to the question this whole podcast opened with. Not a shortcut, not a few years formula, a long buildable pattern of reliability, skill building, reputation, and curiosity that for a meaningful number of people in this industry really has ended in the corner office. The conclusion: let's bring this all the way back to where we started. A 22-year-old answering phones in Tempe, 9 years, most of a decade of deliberate compounding moves, not a myth, not a trick, a real pattern, visible in real documented careers that this entire industry quietly runs on. Here's the whole climb one more time. Agent, build a track record from a blank slate where consistency beats flash. Team lead, the job flips from your own numbers to everyone else's. Operations manager, you stop coaching individuals and start building systems that make good coaching happen at scale. Director, people you can see gives way to systems and financial fluency. Vice president, you stop running an operation and start owning an outcome. And for a rare but real number of people, the final jump, founder or CEO, built on years of genuine curiosity towards the whole business long before anyone required it for you. So here are the biggest lessons from these few hours. This industry promotes based on demonstrated trajectory, not tenure. The five skills, the same five skills: de-escalation, reading what isn't said, working inside constraints, explaining complexity simply, staying steady under pressure, scale from the phones to the executive flow. Your metrics are a case file, not a threat. Trust is built in small, unglamorous deposits, and real climb from agent to CEO exists and are documented, but they are measured in a decade or more, built on ordinary sustained effort. So here's what to do this week. If you are an agent, start a personal log of your own metrics trend and pick one uncomfortable skill to practice. If you are a team lead or manager, identify one person you could be developing more intentionally and have that conversation. If you are already a director or VP, find one part of the business outside your function to genuinely learn about this month. And wherever you are, have one direct conversation with your manager about what the next role actually requires. Most people never ask, and it's one of the highest leverage conversations available to you. Nobody climbing this ladder started with a guarantee. Nick Jiva didn't know at 18 that a summer job would become a 20-year career and a company of his own. Most of the people whose stories echo this, his didn't set out with a master plan either. They just kept showing up, kept getting a little better, kept saying yes to the next uncomfortable opportunity for long enough that the results eventually became undeniable. That's available to more people in this industry than almost any other entry level field in the country. Not because it's easy, but because it rewards exactly the kind of ordinary sustained effort that's fully within your control, starting with your very next shift. Call to action. If this episode gave you a clearer map of your own next move, do things. First, subscribe and follow this show so the next episode finds you automatically. We will be digging into more real documented career paths across industries people don't always associate with fast growth. Second, send this episode to one person in your life who's working a phone job right now and treating it as a placeholder. They might need to hear that it doesn't have to be one. One quick note before we go: the timelines and outcomes in this episode reflect real documented cases and general industry patterns, but individual results vary widely by company, market, and effort. Nothing here is a guarantee. Thanks for spending an hour or so of your day with me. Go build that track record. We will see you in the next episode.